So as far as I remember, last time we had just some general ideas about the metta, and we covered the first questions. They are altogether 6 questions, I think, or 7 questions. Yes, 7 questions and answers explaining different aspects of the metta practice. And the last time we have explained some very important principles which we should keep in mind concerning the difference to the approach to the Brahmavihara practice in the practice of the Bodhisattvas and practice of the disciples. We have explained in the scriptures of the disciples, as Abhidharmakosa explains, Visuddhimagga also explains, and the sutras also explains, the agamas. The apramanas, the Brahmaviharas, cannot cut off the defilements. They are only the pratiksha, they are only to counter the defilements that we have explained. Generally speaking, using first the Visuddhimagga approach, the metta is the opposite of anger or hate or all the states of mind associated with it. The Karuna is the opposite of himsa, of violence. The mudita is the opposite of arati, of boredom, of lack of joy. And the upeksha is the opposite of both the raga and dvesha, of attraction and of liking and disliking. It goes beyond liking and disliking. This is a general explanation. As Halidavasa Sutta of Samyutta Nikaya and so on explains, you cannot attain Bodhi just by practicing the Brahmaviharas. You have to add the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. They are, in the scriptures of the Shravakas at least, explained as the only way, ekayana, to get the ripening of the factors of enlightenment. Both the script Northern and Southern Buddhism explains that, among others, the Brahma Viharas, they strengthen the bodhyangas, the reasons or factors of realization, of enlightenment or of bodhi. This is commonly accepted. But in the Mahayana approach, or in the approach of the practice of the Bodhisattva, we have also explained, it is especially clear in Chinese Buddhism when you read like Hu Yuan and so Zhi the practice of the Brahmaviharas, actually the metta and karuna, I think I have mentioned it the last time, is supposed to remove the wrong view. We know that the removing the wrong view is the condition for attaining the realization. We are all involved in ignorance due to having tendency or the anushayas for the wrong view. because of this very deep-rooted habit of contemplating the world through the symbols related to the Atman, to the self-existence. So we, so to say, understand our thinking through these symbols or through these pictures related to the self-existence. So we don't see actually reality as something in the process of momentary appearance and disappearance. This is the content of realization. Now, the Nagarjuna explains that metta and karuna remove the wrong view, and mudita and upeksha remove tanha, which is the cause of all defilements. When we remove the cause of all defilements, we can realize the bodhyangas and stay in the middle path. So why? This is very important. Why metta and karuna are taught to remove the wrong view? Here we will see this especially in the following part, especially in the explanation of the practice related to mudita, the practice of mudita. And we see it here also in metta. The practice of metta is related to the contemplation of the Brahmaviharas in general. Is related to the contemplation of the highest truth, of the paramartha. We have explained that for the Shravakas, you have only one object, which is taught as object of the Brahmaviharas, and it is the sattvas, the beings. But in case of the bodhisattvas, the object of the practice of the Brahmaviharas is not only the beings, it is also the dharmas, and it is also, we have explained, the highest reality, the dharmakaya, the suchness, however you call it, the reality as it really is. That means the ungraspable reality. Now, when we understand this ungraspable reality, so at least the scriptures of the Bodhisattvas teach, like Ghanavyuha Sutra and so on, when you understand the ultimate reality, you understand everything. You don't need to bother too much about the all understanding all the details of the relative reality. When you understand the highest reality, everything is in it. So finally, the aim of the practice, the aim of the highest realization is to see just one reality. The highest reality and the relative reality is only one. There are no two realities. This is very important to understand and not so easy to penetrate. Ultimately, even the Shravaka Yana teaches that there is only one reality, Eka Satya. Now, in the tradition of the Bodhisattva practice, so it is explained, for example, in Madhyanta Vibhanga and so on, the Brahma Viharas, they are to relate us to the Nishprapancha Jnana, to the knowledge free from multiplying of our perceptions and of our sensations. And they are to lead to what the Madhyanta Vibhanga calls Juan Qing, that means turning the base of our reality. That means to realize, in other words, to realize the highest realization of the Bodhisattva, which is gradual according to the growth of the bodhicitta, to realize the knowledge of non-arising, anutpatti jnana, dharma anutpatti jnana. Know that actually in the highest reality nothing really arises. Things arise in the relative reality, but in the highest reality nothing real can arise. And we will come to this knowledge also in our text, in our understanding of the Brahma Viharas. So let us go so that we don't we relate to the text and don't speak too much to the abstract ideas. We come to the second question, which says, as explained in the Abhidharma, what is the Samadhi of friendliness? It is a contemplation of all sentient beings experiencing happiness. So, according to Kumarajiva, the meditation on the potential of happiness in all sentient beings without exception is the Samadhi of friendliness, or of metta, of love in the sense of friendliness. So one sees all beings in the 10 direction experiencing the happiness. So the question is, so why you just say that the meditator only wishes to make beings happy? We also understand that metta, Visuddhimagga also explained, metta is not a passive attitude. Metta is active attitude. That means you not only stay in the samadhi of love, but you actually practice love in the sense of hita ashaya, in the sense of wishing well to all beings, wishing all happiness to all beings. And this is also the content of bodhicitta. As, for example, the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, Bodhisattva Bhumi explains this: to all beings, the Bodhisattva has the Vatsa Ashaya. He sees all beings as being like the what do you call it? The small cow. Vatsya, the child of the cow.
Calf.
The calf, yes, calf. Today I have some heavy hat. The springtime coming. So the seeing a calf, of course in India, calf is a symbol of the beauty. Some of the features of the perfect body is eyes like the calf and so on. Calf is innocent and beautiful, and the mind of bodhicitta is also innocent and beautiful, because it wishes well to all beings, including the enemies. So for example, Atisha says that if you don't love your enemies, you still have a potential of hate. If you have a potential of hate, you cannot be a bodhisattva. So how does Kumarajiva answer? So he answers that the meditation is a gradual process. It is also explained very clearly in the Abhidharmakosa and so on. You have the beginning practitioner, the intermediate practitioner, and you have the practitioner who has gone beyond the manasikara, who has mastered the manasikara. That is going beyond the manasikara. He does not need any effort to use the image which he has acquired in his mind. So anytime he can use it for meditation. We will talk about it later when we speak about the meditation on the pure. So you start just with one person, small group of person, and then like adding fuel to the fire, you make it endless in all direction. But what is very important here is when the friendliness he shares this friendliness with all those who suffer, those people who hate also suffer. When the power of friendliness increases, one actually sees all beings experiencing happiness. And we will see in the text later, this also Kumarajiva connects with the meditation on the Buddha, being the ultimate reality. He being the translator of the Amitayu Sutra and so on, he introduced more or less, it is one of his big contributions, the practice of contemplation of the Buddha as ultimate reality. And he connects this with the practice of the Brahma Viharas. And it is also in the scriptures. For example, Manjushri Paripricha Sutra, which is quite popular in Chinese, it says that the cause of body is the practice of the paramis, of course, and the upaya, the skillful means, are the 4 Brahma Viharas. This is how the Mahayana scriptures tend to explain the importance of the Brahma Viharas. Why? This is also very important to understand. According to Buddhism, the wrong view and all the kleshas actually are related to the misunderstanding of Vedana, misunderstanding of sensation. Because we misunderstand sensations, we are so to say, not realized. So, no doubt then the Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva path, especially emphasizes this aspect. The state of a Bodhisattva and state of the Buddha is ultimate goodness. Ultimate goodness is based on mastery of the mind, and mastery of the mind is based on mastery of the sensations. This you will find also in the Shravaka scriptures. It's the same as in Chula Vedana Sutta and so on. The Vedanas, the Vedana controls the mind, and the mind controls everything. This is what the Agamas teach. This is what the Buddhism teach in general. If one does not see clearly this principle, one cannot understand Buddhism. So we are confused and we tend to wrong views because of misunderstanding of Vedana. And we misunderstand the Vedana because we do not understand the anatta principle. We will see in our text, Kumarajiva explains very clearly the permanence, impermanence, all these, they are not all-including principles. Only anatta principle is all-including. And anatta principle is one truth. The permanence, impermanence, and so on is in a way one-sided view, because it belongs to part of the reality. It cannot belong to the complete reality. So Buddha can use the self to explain the reality. Buddha can use also the non-self to explain reality. Both are useful for explaining reality. The self is needed because if self is denied, then the Vinaya makes no sense. There is no good bhikshu, there is no bad bhikshu, there is no good person, there is no bad person. So the self is needed, and the non-self is also needed. If there is no non-self, if the impermanence is also needed. If there is no impermanence, one will not understand the inconvenience of samsaric existence. So both are needed, but both are one-sided. Only the non-self view is without any side. It's a universal. So let us go to the third question. This principle is explained. Beings do not actually attain it, but how can one see them experiencing happiness without letting mental perversion arise? Mental perversion, viparyasa, tientao, is in Buddhism the content of experience. According to the Abhidharma, because we have 12 kinds of tientao, of perversion, mental perversion, we are subjected to ignorance. We have perversion in regard to view, drishti, viparyasa. We have sanya, vipalasa. We have the perversion in regard to perception. And we have the chitta viparyasa. We have perversion in regard to cognition. And each perversion has 4 aspects or 3 aspects, depends. We see the impermanent as permanent. We see the that which is subjected to distress based on impermanence as being permanent, as being happy, as being satisfactory. We see non-self as a self, and we see impure as a pure. Or we see that which has no self. In Northern Buddhism, a little different. We see that which has no self-essence. We see not as empty that which has we believe in self-essence. That which does not belong to the self, we believe as belonging to the self. That means not empty. So the seeing of all beings as being happy actually is also one of these perversions, nothing else. For if one takes this view. Now the Kumarajiva explains that everything depends on how you use it. And you will find the same principle in the Tika of Brahma Jala Sutta, that the strength of the body depends on the strength of the paramis. When our paramis are powerful, the body becomes powerful. When our paramis are not powerful, the body will not be powerful. We may attain the body, but it is compared to the light of this light fly. Without the deep practice of the paramis. Then the light of the body increases as the power of the paramis increase. So you have the Pakuti Arahant, the normal Arahant who has no supernatural powers, has no jhanas. His light will not be like the Arahant who has these things, and his light will not be like the light of the great disciples, and the great disciples will not match the light of Shariputra and Moggallana, and Shariputra Moggallana will not match the light of the Pacceka Buddha, who is compared to the moon, and the Buddha is compared to the sun. Nothing can match the light of the fully enlightened Buddha. This is not explanation of the Mahayana scriptures. You will find in the Tikas. And the Tikas, of course, they were influenced, no doubt, also by the Northern Buddhism. You will find some clear indications of that. Especially those parts explaining the practice of the Bodhisattva. Like Charita Pitaka and so on. So now, the Brahma Viharas, their power also depends on the way how high your realization is. And the common person can benefit greatly from the Brahma Viharas. The enlightened person can also benefit from them. If he uses them correctly, can benefit even more. And of course, depends on the strength of our realization, on how we use it, how if we get the ultimate use of it. The ultimate use of it, as I have explained, is a skillful means for realizing the causes of realization. This is clearly explained by Kumarajiva. We will see in the continuation. And now we come to this important passage which I have tried to explain. Furthermore, it's the end of the page of question 3. Furthermore, in the Buddhist Dharma, there is no real existence of sentient beings. So how can suffering be considered true and happiness a mental perversion? The mental perversion consists of attachment to the characteristic of selves where there are no sentient beings. Thus, the perversion consists of seeing the self as permanent or impermanent, limitless or limited, and so on. So, what is here, of course, Kumarajiva is taking, even so speaking to the Shravakas, he is taking the view of the Pragya Paramita Sutras. The ultimate reality is only the reality which is aprapya, impossible to attain. And the ultimate reality is the ultimate reality because, as this Pragya Paramita clearly explains, the kleshas, they belong to the relative reality. They don't belong to the highest reality. Highest reality is the highest reality because it is by definition free from the defilements. So the meditator of friendliness should know that beings are just a concept. But Yogacara Bhumi Shastra says, among others, in the Bodhisattva Bhumi, that a Bodhisattva does what? He uses the perversion of the sattva, of the sentient beings, in order to lead the sentient beings away from this perversion. Very wonderful explanation. So the Bodhisattva stays in the perversion of the sentient beings, but consciously, with understanding, in order to lead the sentient beings away from this perversion. So this is kind of a Bodhisattva mana. But normally we do not know it is a mana. But the Bodhisattva knows. So he is a Bodhisattva. Using the thinking of the common non-enlightened person in order to, through this thinking, to lead them away from wrong view. That is why Nagarjuna explains that love and compassion is to counter the wrong view. This is very important. That is why I have explained. So we have a different perspective, but it does not mean that this perspective is opposed to the perspective of the Agamas. It is complementary to this perspective, and so it should be understood. This is specially emphasized in the Mula Pragya, in the basic scripture of the Madhyamika, of Nagarjuna. Since both real existence and non-existence of sentient beings is extreme views, one should not solely consider the existence of being a mental perversion. So we come to the view you will find also in the Agamas even, that the real existence is one extreme, the denial of existence is another extreme, and the Bodhisattva Kashyapa Parivarta Sutra, you will find it in Agamas also. The Bodhisattva, he goes the middle way, avoiding both extreme of annihilation and extreme of existence. And of course, this also the Shravaka does the same. So what is also interesting, he compares this practice of the four Brahmaviharas, starting with metta, with the practice of Kritsya Ayatanas, kasinas. In kasinas, when you practice kasinas, and it is a basic practice for, especially for Shravakas, for Bodhisattvas also, to acquire the supernatural powers, the abhinyas. Now, Abhidharmakosa, among others, also in 8th chapter explains that the Brahmaviharas and the abhinyas, they are the most beautiful and the most desirable results of the practice of the jhanas. The jhanas make the practice of the supernatural powers and of the Brahma Viharas, so to say, they bring them to perfection. This is very important to understand. And this we see also in the order of the scripture. You have first, you have Asubha to get away from Tanha, which is the cause of defilements. Then the 5 hindrances which prevent us from entering the dhyanas. Then the Rupa dhyanas. Then the Brahma viharas. Then the Shubha meditation. First Ashubha, now Shubha, because one has to see very clearly the liberation of the pure mind. And the pure mind can be based on and must be based on the relative reality which is impure by its very nature. Then you have the arupas. The practice of the arupas is also very important for the abhinyas, and it is related also to the practice of the kritsya ayatanas, to the kasinas. One has to master the kasinas, it is the same tradition, in order to master the supernatural powers. So this is the order of the scripture also. And this is the order of the practice related to the agamas. And here the only difference, he takes the same order as retained in the practice of the Shravakas, but relates it to the practice of the Bodhisattvas. So just in the practice of the kasinas, the meditator, he can small object, he can become as big. A drop of blood can become the whole world when it becomes a kasina. So one can change a small object into immeasurable object to a small object according to one's wish. Similarly, there is no reason why through one's resolution one can see all beings experiencing happiness or see all beings experiencing the suffering of impermanence. So each being has his potential of happiness, his measure of happiness, and each being should be commiserated, should be dealt with compassion, because they are not aware of this great potential of happiness. Of course, one can relate it again to the Bodhisattva practice, to the contemplation of the Buddha nature. Now, fourth question. This may be so in other states of existence. How about the hell realms? Well, it is very easy. In hell realms also there is a potential for happiness. This potential for happiness is in each and every mind. In some mind it is more clear, is in some mind it is almost completely hidden, but it is there. We should remember the story of in the Vinaya. It is said that after his realization, the Buddha sees all beings as lotus flowers immersed in mud. And that's why he decides he wants to stay in the bliss of realization. And this, we non-realized beings, we are impossible to be taught. But then the Brahma convinces him that there are some lotus flowers already ready to go above the mud. So the Buddha decides to teach the beings. So this potential of happiness manifested as or symbolized by lotus flower is in all beings, because all beings have mind, and mind has potential of happiness. So all beings can have this hita ashaya, can have the beneficial attitude, and according to Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, all beings can use the beneficial attitude, and all beings can give rise to the kusala, to the good, by practicing some degree of upeksha. We will come to it later. This upeksha, even in the practice of metta, the upeksha strengthens the kusala nature of the metta. Without the upeksha, the kusala nature, the good nature of love, will not be strengthened. So it will be in danger of getting stuck in the attachments, which are related, of course, to tanha. So, fifth question, what qualities does a practitioner of friendliness obtain? Well, it is the same when you read the Visuddhimagga, you will have the very similar explanations. In Theravada, we usually explain 11 advantages of metta Anusamsa Sutta of Anguttara Nikaya. Almost everybody knows by heart. And there is another Metta Anusamsa Sutta which explains the attitude of correct attitude of metta. The one practicing metta, he never yam janapadam yati nigame rajadhanyo sabatha pujito hoti yomitanam nadubati. One who does not cheat his friends will be always respected everywhere. And the 11 advantages of metta, you will find very similar things. One will not be harmed by anything. Sukham supati sukham pati bhujati napapakam supinam pasati manusanam piyo hoti amanusanam piyo hoti devata rakkanti naasa agiva satava visamva kamati tuvatam chitam samadhyati mukhavano vipasidati asamulho kalam karoti uttarim apativijanto brahmaloku pago hoti. These are the 11 advantages of metta. One sleeps in happiness, gets up in happiness, one does not see the bad dreams, one will be protected by the gods. Napapakam supinam pasati devata rakhan, one will be then one will not be harmed, as our text says, by anything, by weapon, by poison, by fire. Here wild beasts also. And the one will be shining, one will be able to enter into samadhi immediately. Tuvatam chitam samadhyati mukhavano vipasidati, his face will be shining. And when he does not attain the highest, the nirvana, he does not die in delusion, and when he does not attain the highest, the nirvana, he will go straight to heaven. So these are the advantages common to all practitioners. Now the sixth question, what is the factor of friendliness itself? This is Abhidharma question, of course, characterized by Lakhana, by Lakshana. What is the characteristic? It comes to it also the function, the kriya. So it is a mental factor. What mental factor? Advesha. It is a mental factor. There is no, in Abhidharma, no special mental factor called metta, because it is contained in the advesha. Advesha has to be present in each and every wholesome mind. And so metta is advesha. Metta is lack of dislike. That is advesha. So if you go to India, there is a place called Madurai where you will, in South India, in Tamil Nadu, where you will find a museum of yoga, and there you will be able to see how a yogi sees the aura of sentient beings. And the hate produces the black color in the aura, and the love produces a white color. So you can see all kinds of auras of the people who tend to be angry, hateful, and the people who make love their natural characteristic. So it is a mental factor. As a mental factor, it appears in the mental process. So this is here kind of a little bit of a contradiction, because according to the some Mahayana scriptures, these Brahma Viharas, they are the natural state of the Buddha. And the Buddha natural state is nishprapancha, beyond cognition, because it is beyond manasikara, beyond attention. But the metta is a mental factor appearing. Mental factors appear only in cognition. When there is no cognition, what mental factors will appear? So this is kind of a secret of the mind. Is the mind free of cognition? Is it always connected with positivity, or is it beyond positive or negative? So this is a big problem in Buddhism, not easy to answer. So, but then the text explains it can cut off thinking process or not. It can be together with applied and sustained thought, without applied and sustained thought. It can be with jhana, here up to fourth jhana, and it can be without the jhana also. It can appear in first jhana, second jhana, third jhana. It can be, that is to say, with the pleasant sensation or neutral sensation, because the fourth dhyana has neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensation. And it is called illimitable mind because in the fourth dhyana, this is difference, and in all other stages it takes limitless beings as objects. It is called the Brahma conduct, Brahma vehicle, because of its purity. Loving thought and commiseration beneficial to all. So this is particularly Chinese tendency, always to bring the metta and karuna into one. In Visuddhimagga you will find a clear separation, because when you practice metta, you are determined that all beings should be happy. When you practice karuna, your determination is, may all the beings be freed from suffering. So this is how you get into samadhi, by this determination. But in Chinese Buddhism especially, they always tend to be brought together. When you have metta, of course you also have karuna, but they are separate. But in Chinese Buddhism, always a tendency to bring them together. Why? This is because we have said this metta and karuna, as Nagarjuna explains and emphasized by many Chinese masters, metta and karuna remove the wrong view. Their job, they are together because they together improve, they together remove the wrong view. When there is no wrong view, then the metta and karuna comes to perfection and they can join together. So there is a complete positivity. Now the last question of today: how does one practice friendliness? How does one practice metta? So he starts with the idea which comes from Agamas also, among others also Kausambhiya Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya explains that it is or Chula Asapura Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya explain that the 4 Brahmaviharas starting with metta is the samichi, is the correct conduct. So a correct conduct of the monk, Kausambhiya Sutta also explained, for a monk, if there is to be harmony in the community, not only monks, the acts of mind, speech and body must be motivated by the metta. Must be having metta. If they do not have metta, there will not be harmony in any community. And the purpose of religion, Buddhism not excluded, is to bring harmony into the community. That is samichi. That is the right conduct, bringing the harmony. So he is talking to the monk, so monk should now, because I'm a monk, I am supposed to live in the sense of samichi, the correct conduct, and that is metta. And especially because I'm consuming the food of others, I should be always aware of it. In the Agamas it is said that the offerings to the one practicing metta will, even so he has not realized jhanas, he has no at least one of the fruits, he still, the offering to such a person, such a monk practicing metta, will not be in vain. It will be of great value. So no matter whether one is a monk or the layman, he should reflect. Because of the power of friendliness, I can be in peace and secure without distress in this evil world, and so on. In the middle of hot vexations, I shall keep my mind cool, like if I were approaching a village with a cool pond. Just like one wearing solid shoes cannot be injured by thorns, even so the practitioner dwells in the realm of desire, which is characterized by strife, but he is free from injury. Those who know the Shantideva Bodhicharya Avatara, so he explains that you don't need to cover the whole earth with leather. If you cover your souls with leather, you are protected. And here, this covering your soul with leather is practicing metta. Because by practicing metta, actually the agamas and the northern Buddhism explain the metta actually in a way contains all the other Brahma Viharas. It is a base for all the other Brahma Viharas, and it is the ultimate opening to the body. That is why in Southern Buddhism, metta is the ninth parami among the 10 paramis of this Southern Buddhism, and the upeksha, which is the content of enlightenment, which includes the mind free from kleshas, free from raga, dvesha, is the last parami, and it is the content of body. The one who has body remains in upeksha, not Vedana upeksha, but samskara upeksha, the upeksha of formations. That means equanimity, the perfect balance of the mind. Perfect balance of the mind is the content of realization. No matter whether of the Shravakas or of the Bodhisattvas, it is the ultimate content. And the same idea you will find in Theravada also here. When a commoner practices friendliness, he will get rid of all his resentment and hate and attain immeasurable merits and produce pure karmic results. No mundane virtue surpasses it. So text connects it, same as Madhyanta Vibhanga and other texts, with the practice of 7 factors of awakening, bodhyangas. Madhyanta Vibhanga says that one who practices the Brahma Viharas, he accomplishes the Drishta Dharma Sukha Vihara, the happiness here and now. He accomplishes the punya, he accomplishes the bodhyangas, the causes of realization, and he accomplishes the kshanti, the endurance. So same emphasis you will find in Visuddhimagga. Visuddhimagga explains Kantya bio navijati. There is nothing higher than endurance. And metta, the advesha, is the gate to the practice of endurance. Because endurance includes the endurance of suffering. Due to endurance of suffering, one realizes the ultimate kshanti, which is Dharma kshanti. So here you will come also to the idea which you will find in Nirvana Sutra, the metta object Mahayana teaches is real because it is nishprapancha. It is freed from multiplication of cognition through desire, multiplication of perceptions and sensations which form cognition by desire. So this is the ultimate, as Pragya Paramita Sutras explain, this is the ultimate punya, the ultimate merit. Ultimate merit is belonging to the highest reality, does not belong to beings. This is the most important, one of the most important aspects of the Pragya Paramita teachings. In the highest reality, all is perfect. No clashes. In the reality of beings, nothing can be perfect. So in the Mahayana Sutras then, like Avatamsaka Sutra, you will find many different aspects of the practice of metta. They are also more or less mentioned here. So for the beginners, there are 16 practices which will enable them to attain friendliness speedily. This is the end of this passage. You can go through them, and it relates us also to what Avatamsaka Sutra explains, and what I have mentioned about the Kausambi Sutta, living together with Sabrahmacharis, hearing and speaking to them with friendliness, not annoying others, moderation in food, reducing sleep, being reserved in speech, 4 bodily postures, stable and agreeable, sufficient necessities for life as one wishes, not indulging in meaningless argument in regard to the practice of Dharma. Those are 16 practices to assist the Samadhi of friendliness. Actually, the Avatamsaka Sutra explained that Samadhi of friendliness is related to all kusala. So let us finish here for today, and next week we go to Karuna, which is most important for the practitioner of the Bodhisattva path, because the Mahakaruna is the cause of the Bodhisattva, is the root of the Bodhisattva practice, but maybe purposely, I don't know, the Kumarajiva avoids detailed explanation of this practice and kind of skips over it. But he does not skip over it without giving some indications of its importance. We will talk about it next week. So let us finish here for today. Are there any questions?
If there are any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Okay. Anyone has any question which may be also useful for others? Please try to find some good questions.
I have a question, Bhante.
Yes, as usual,
Sorry. If somebody else has a question, I would rather wait for them, but nobody...
No.
Okay.
We have plenty of time. No.
So, I'm wondering if, of course, this is a very far-fetched idea, but in the absence of klesha, could you say that these 4 are naturally occurring in an awakened mind? In other words, in the absence of, any mental affliction, would metta karuna mudita, upeka sort.
You know, in Buddhism or in any religion, you will always find some logical contradictions. This is why the religion cannot really fully satisfy any logicians. So, strictly speaking, if you have, there are mental factors form the process of cognition. There cannot be cognition without a mental process, and the content of the citta is the mental factors, the cetasikas, literally that which belongs to citta. But then, when there is no mental process, when you don't cognize any object in particular, and we are taught that the mind of the Buddha has no manasikara. The mental process starts because you pay attention to something. And you, so to say, pay attention to something in terms of its characteristic. Every Dharma has some characteristic. When you pay attention to it, so your mind will, due to mental factors, will engage in the process of cognition. But now the Buddha is beyond manasikara and is beyond vitarka. Vitarka is also what makes the process of cognition possible, because you investigate the object. In Chinese, actually, they translate vitarka as xun, which means investigation, searching. Searching is cognition process. You search something, therefore you think. If you don't search anything, what do you think? So now, when you don't make any particular object in the mind, where is the mind? So this is a big mystery. We know the mind through the mental factors, which are the content of the mind and which belong to the mind. But of course, nobody can deny that when there is no mental process, there is still mind. But what kind of mind? Metta, as we have seen, is also a mental factor, namely advesha. And Karuna is also a mental factor. At least in the northern Buddhism, there is a mental factor called ahimsa. That is Karuna. Now, the mudita is also a mental factor. It's a saumanasya. Upeksha is also a mental factor. So now the Mahayana Buddhism, as opposed to the Buddhism of the disciples, emphasizes that the nirvana is the ultimate good. And this ultimate good is based on the is non-dual. It's beyond duality. Beyond duality means also beyond thinking. Because when we think, there is already the subject and the object. When there is no subject and the object, what thinking is there? So, very difficult to explain logically. The Buddha has to think also. The Arahant has to think also. But he thinks but it is not a real thinking. He feels, but it is beyond feeling. So, kind of a magic word or word which is difficult to explain. But we have to explain. If we do not explain, nobody will believe that such a world exists, in thinking without thinking, feeling without feeling, perceiving without perceiving, paying attention without paying attention. But it must be there, because we believe that it is there. We try our best. Is it so, Chetso?
I don't know, Bhante. When we talk about a Buddha not having any conceptual mind at all, that doesn't mean the Buddha does not cognize, right?
Yes,
so
right.
it seems that
he has to make normally, in order to see this is Ananda and I have this and this thing to discuss with him, he has to make a kind of a attention which is not real attention. That means he just reflects in his mind. So you can call it a special, some commentaries may call it a special attention. We have a normal attention in the sense that we have to investigate the object, but the Buddha does not need to investigate the object. He does not need to search for the object, because he has already penetrated the real nature of all objects.
yes.
But in our case, we still need to search. But the searching is the path, of course, because vitarka is the sama sankappa. Sama sankappa means correct thinking. Correct thinking is the content of the middle path. And Buddhism explains sama sankappa, samyak sankalpa, as vitarka. So the Arahat has to think, the Buddha has to think. Buddha is also an Arahat. But it is not a thinking as we understand it. It is a thinking beyond thinking, feeling beyond feeling. So this is of course difficult to explain, but one has to explain it, otherwise impossible. So Buddha, just like even in Christianity you will find, he uses the similes to explain these kind of situations. And they are the best way to explain for someone who has difficulty to understand how the mind gets into trouble by clinging to certain symbols as being a reality. Okay?
Thank you, Bhante. I think someone else maybe has a question on the chat.
Yes, there is a question here, Bhante. Osman, if you want, you can ask, unmute and ask, or I can ask it for you.
Bhante, I just want to verify, is beyond duality another way of saying the middle way?
You put it in this way, so it will be like that. But normally in Theravada they don't explain it in this way. In the scriptures of the Bodhisattvas, in the Mahayana scriptures, it is indeed explained in this way. But normally in Theravada it is not explained in this way, because they will not agree that samsara and nirvana are ultimately no difference. But this is taken for granted, and it has indeed justification, because the ultimate reality is anatta. As we have seen in the text, the impermanence is not, does not fit for all realities. It does not fit for nirvana. It does not fit for space. So we cannot say that space is impermanent, or we cannot say that nirvana is impermanent. But the non-self contains all realities, including permanent, impermanent, all without exception. And that is why there is no reason to claim that nirvana and samsara, from the point of view of ultimate reality, there cannot be any difference between them. But only from the point of view of ultimate reality, not from the point of view of the relative reality. In the scriptures of the Bodhisattvas, the four aggregates and the four noble truths, they are also only means for realization of ultimate reality. They are not the ultimate reality. Impermanence cannot be the ultimate reality. This is a difference. But we should know that any view which is useful for detachment is a Buddhist view. Naturally, it is okay to put it in this way. But we can see the things from different perspectives. We can see the things from the perspective of relative reality, and these teachings of the aggregates and so on belong to the relative reality. And we can also see things from the point of view of ultimate reality, which cannot be dualistic. But
I see, Bhante. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bhante, I don't think there are any further questions.
So let us transfer the message.
Bhante, can I request you, if it's not too long, if you could recite the Metta Sutta?
Metta Sutta. Oh.
Yes.
Okay. If it
Is it difficult? Because there is so much suffering just now.
Okay.
Too much.
I will recite.
Too much.
And then we.
Yes, please.
Then we transfer the merits, and then everything okay. Huh?
Yes, please.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Karaniya matta kusallene yantang santang padam abhisamecce. Sako ujuche sujuche suvacho chasemudu anatimani. Santu sakoche subagoche apakkichoche salahukavuti. Santindriyoche nipakoche apangabo kulesu ananugindo. Nachakundang samachare kimchi yenye vinyu pare upavadeyung Sukino va khemino hontu sabbe satta bhavantu sukitatta yeke chipana bhutatti tasava tavarava anavasesa digha mahantava majima rasakha anakatulla diktha va andittha yeche dure vasanti avidure bhuta va sambhavesi va sabbe satta bhavantu sukitatta naparo param nikumbete na atimanyete katanchinam kamchi vyarosana patighasanya na anyamanyasa dukham michaye mata yata niyam puttamayusa ekaputta Evampi sababhute sumanasam bhavaye aparimanam mettancha sabbalokasmin manasam bhavaye aparimanam udang adoacha tiriyanche asambadam averam asapattam thittang charan Nisinno va sayano va yavatassa vigatamindo etam satim adittaye brahmam etam viharam idamahu ditinchanupaggama silava dasanena sampanno kame suvineyagedham nahi jatu gambaseyang punaretiti etena saceva jena hontute jaya mangalam etena saceva jena nasantu sabupadava etena saceva jena sabbe roga upassamentute Nakkata yakabhutanam papagaha nivarana paritassa anubhavene hantu te sampadave yat dunimittam avamangalam cha yocha amanapo sakuna sasanno papagaho adusupinam makantam buddha anubhavene vinasamentu Yat dunimittam avamangalang cha yocha amanapo sakuna sasando papagaho adusupinam makantam dhamma anubhavena vinasamentu Yat dunimittam avamangalang cha yocha amanapo sakuna sasando papagaho adusupinam makantam Sangha anubhavena vinasamentu Akasatta chabummattha deva naga mahidika Punyantang anumoditva chiramrakantu loka sasanam Akasatta chabummattha deva naga mahidika Punyantang anumoditva chiramrakantu desanam Akasatta chabummattha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiramrakantu tumambaram devo vasatu kalene sassa sampatti hotu cha pito bhavatu loko cha raja bhavatu dhammiko sadhu sadhu sadhu. Thank you.